again, and welcome back as we conclude our Day 3 live stream coverage from RSA 2024. Sorry, RSA Conference 2024. I'm Jameson Cush from Ion Tech and TechTarget Editorial. And if you missed any of our previous day's stream, please find us on YouTube. Just search for Ion Tech. Next to me once again, Sabrina Paulin. Last we spoke, you were hot in pursuit of Jason Sudeikis, who's here at RSA.
Well, I'm a sucker for stardom. I didn't meet him. I was about 100 feet away from him, taking a video, and I was kindly asked to leave, just because, you know, they were like, too much celebrity in one room. Let's get you out of here. No.
Well, speaking of too much celebrity in one room, once again, we are joined by Arielle Waldman and Alex Culafi, TechTarget security reporters. Thank you once again for joining us. Another day in the books.
Yes.
Alex, I know you just filed the story regarding it was election security. Mm-hmm. Can you please tell us more?
Right, so this is a huge election year, obviously presidential general election in the United States, but also about half of the world's population will also be voting in national elections this year. I sort of had two election adjacent things that I did today. One, I talked to CISA's executive director, Brandon Wales, and asked him about how election security is looking going into 2024. And I also went into a session which was sort of a post-mortem of a pilot project to pair security researchers with voting technology vendors to get them to find vulnerabilities in this technology, and then go through a coordinated disclosure process, which I think is usually 90 to 120 days, in order to fix the vulnerabilities and then disclose them to the public responsibly. And that's super cool because there's fundamentally an interesting relationship between vendors and researchers, where depending on who you're dealing with, some people of prominence and power will say like, hey, researchers make security a lot better, which I think is true. But others will try to keep researchers at arm's length, which has famously maybe been kind of the case with something like election technology, which can be kind of controversial. So that's super cool. But I was talking to CISA's Brandon Wales today, and he said that CISA has been covering US elections since the beginning of 2017, when Russia was sort of trying to compromise some state elections. Then when 2020 happened, there was an emphasis on adjusting to the huge new technology changes because there was a global pandemic, so they had to make mail-in ballots more secure. There was also all this misinformation stuff happening. And then heading out of 2020 and into 2024, what he told me was he was seeing lots of requests for further mail-in ballot security hardening, which I think mail-in ballots are just a cool piece of technology in general, and it's good that they're making that more secure. But what was even more interesting was he said stakeholders are asking for physical security assessments as well. And note that CISA is the cyber agency of the US government, but they were saying that they were doing like physical security drills, de-escalation drills, drills in more severe situations I won't describe here. And on the one hand, I think it's important that the cyber agency also accounts for physical security, but there's also an unsettling element that the US cyber agency is talking about like active shooter drills and stuff, right?
But that aside, I mean, to date, US elections have been relatively secure, right?
Yeah,
There's no high-profile cases of vote tallies being altered, or Russians or state actors changing things.
Yeah, folks will try, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a huge political element to it too. So it's very controversial and very sensitive and very high stakes. So even though there hasn't been these huge cases of widespread voter fraud that we know of, no security expert will really say that. The political nature of it, and then the high stakes nature of it involving whole populations around the world, means that CISA and any government sort of around the world has to really pay attention to this. And another thing Brandon Wills told me is that at RSA and then also outside of RSA, he was talking to international partners who are also involved in security, and there's a lot of information sharing going on, saying, what are you doing to secure your elections? Here's what we're doing, because securing one election can help secure other elections as well, which I think is a cool way of doing it.
So with the U.S. elections in particular, because they are run at the state level, does that make them safer, or does that make them harder to secure? This is 50 states, 50 different election officials and overseeing things, different systems, I'm guessing?
I'm not sure because I'm not in security engineering personally, but my understanding with election security is that it is very difficult and very high stakes. From all the way down up.
I think the disinformation part is the worst cyber-wise, because a lot of threat actors, nation-state actors, they spread this disinformation campaigns online and to try to, So I think that's the biggest concern probably for elections so far.
And speaking of malicious actors, we have been beating around the bush a little bit about Lockbit in our previous conversations together. The big news about Lockbit is that its ringleader's identity was revealed. Can we take it back a couple steps? Arielle, what is Lockbit? What are they doing? What's everyone been talking about?
Lockbit is one of the most prolific ransomware groups. They've maintained a top most active spot in many vendors' threat actors lists over the past few years, and they gained so much attention that a lot of law enforcement operations have been kind of centered on them. They try to disrupt them, but then Lockbit kind of brings their infrastructure back online. So they've been really hard to knock down. So this is like a big win. This is a big story, big success for law enforcement, Lockbit.
This has been one of, I would say, the most interesting things to me that has happened in recent months in security, because I've never seen a case where a government agency such as the UK's NCA, which led this sort of coalition called Operation Kronos to take down Lockbit. What they did was they established a data leak site on the .onion Tor dark web data leak website of Lockbit, and they posted press releases, they posted data that they took from Lockbit. And I believe
turned it around.
And I believe that Lockbit Sup, who's the primary administrator, I believe that was posted to the website too. Now you might say like, oh, that's kind of a cool, cute little gimmicky PR thing, but you got to understand that the way ransomware disruptions work, although this stuff is important, it's been a game of whack-a-mole. It's been getting decryption keys, it's been infiltrating the network, and then maybe some sanctions, and then the threat actors, they disperse, they go elsewhere. But what's nice about the reputational damage, which happens from the governments trying to embarrass them, is that then other threat actors don't want to work with a big ransomware as a service vendor like Lockbit. So I asked Executive Director Wales today about that, and although he didn't want to comment super directly because it was more in the FBI's purview than CISA's, what he did say was that, like, in combating ransomware, every tool that defenders can use is important. And I think this is a really interesting, cool one.
I talked with Alan Liska from Recorded Future as well today, and he said, you know, you can't arrest these threat actors because they are in Russia, or he's in Russia, for example. But yeah, like Alex said, it's really good to put them out there. Affiliates won't work with them. They know that they face sanctions if they do work with him, which would hinder their ability to get paid, which is a big, they want to get paid, obviously. So it is a win, although they can't arrest them necessarily, just knowing who he is, turning the pages on him. And Alan also said, we should celebrate the success because we haven't got a lot so far in ransomware, and we should take the success, but you never know what's going to happen down the road.
Did we say his name yet? It's a 31-year-old Russian national, Dmitry Koreshev.
Correct,
So it's a PR win, basically. I mean, I was thinking, like, what are we going to do now that he's been revealed? What are you going to do? So what?
Exactly,
That's his name. But it's now no one, is going to work with him, or he's,
It's
demystified.
It's going to be a lot more difficult to work with him.
Yes.
So in the early days after this initial disruption happened, Lockbit tried to restore its servers and tried to make a really quick comeback.
Yeah.
But what Trend Micro, I think it was, found was that the comeback wasn't really working, in part because of this reputational damage and the amount of damage that and compromise that the government coalition managed to do to Lockbit's infrastructure. So it seems like embarrassing the threat actors back, which has been their MO for so long, of using like embarrassment as a pressure tactic, might actually be handy in law enforcement disruptions.
And I guess he had kind of was teasing law enforcement before this happened. He said, like, if anyone can find me, I'll give you a $10 million reward.
Wow.
Because he was that confident that he
So-
wouldn't be discovered. And
It's like an Uno reverse card.
Yeah.
It's like using your own strategy against you. Yeah.
Exactly.
What's interesting too about this story is they revealed some of like the financial behind it. So he'd get a 20% share of each ransom payment made by victims.
Oh, yeah.
So the $500 million were paid out, and he's pocketing $100 million. It's like
Crazy.
good work
yeah.
if you can get it.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't believe it was one person kind of handling a lot of that, too.
so just moving on, you also, I just want to make sure we cover all your stories.
Oh, sure.
White House critical infrastructure.
Oh, yes.
There was Harry Coker Jr.
Yes.
Was he presenting?
Yes, he
Okay,
was.
so he's the National Cyber Director at the White House, and he said, the days of physical threats of our critical infrastructure are long gone.
Yes.
The cyber threats to critical infrastructure are severe and not going away.
Yes.
That's
I
ominous.
know. Definitely. That didn't sound good. He discussed the White House released a national cybersecurity strategy last year, so this is the year anniversary, so we kind of talked about the progress, and a main pillar of that strategy was helping to address risks against critical infrastructure. And 1 year later, it sounds like still ongoing, maybe worse. He said they pose an unacceptable risk, and that's clearly ongoing, as highlighted by Volt Typhoon, who we talked about on another.
Yeah, Voltec was featured pretty prominently in that story.
Right.
So he said, that they're a huge threat to critical infrastructure. It's really ongoing. So yes, strategy has a bit of a way to go in regards to protecting critical infrastructure, like water, transportation.
Absolutely.
Elections?
Yeah, probably.
All right, so we're at the end of day 3. This is the last we are going to be speaking with you guys, but I know
Yes.
that there's a little bit more on your agenda. You're not quite done yet. What else are you guys hoping to learn, uncover from RSA conference? What else is on your horizon?
Tomorrow I'm speaking with Cyber Insurer Coalition. So that'll be interesting to see. They always put out a lot of reports about what policyholders are being affected by, and that's always good to know. So I'm anxious to learn more about that. VPNs and edge devices continue to pose a big risk. The NSA discussed that today as well, and Coalition covers that a lot, so I'm going to talk with them about that more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Alex, what about you?
So on my front, I actually did finish my sessions and interviews today.
Oh.
Flying out tomorrow. But as a consolation, I'll tell you about something else I've been working at
Please.
RSA.
Yes.
So I just filed a story, which should be going up later today
Okay.
or early tomorrow, about one of the themes I saw at RSA conference. Now, as we've said before, AI has been the star of the show, as we all sort of expected it to be. But on day 3 of the show, as I'm sort of collecting my notes and talking to like my last interviewees, the thing I'm realizing is that secure by design is another secondary theme that's coming up at RSA. And I've seen that in 3 facets. The first is generative AI as a whole. Generative AI is being applied very quickly and very hastily by some organizations, which leaves a lot of room open for misconfigurations and identity attacks and model poisoning and a lot of other AI-related threats. So securing by design as this technology sort of goes up off the ground floor is going to be very important. The second is CISA today actually announced that, I think it was 68, but over 60 companies signed their Secure by Design pledge, which was a pledge that they established as part of an initiative they started a year ago, where companies would commit to further introducing secure by design principles, including security at the software development level over the next year, and to publicly document those improvements. And then 68 companies signed up. I included in my story a comment from Ivanti, who's had like a lot of vulnerability issues in recent years, so it was nice to see them make a public commitment to making those improvements. And then on the third piece is, this morning I discussed Microsoft. They had a tough security stretch for a few years. As part of their expanded Secure Future initiative, they're promoting software by design, software by default, and then secure by design, secure by default, and secure operations.
Right.
And that sort of represents a need to instill secure development principles at the software development level, which is important because when you're Microsoft, independent of everything else we've talked about, they're like a 40-year-old company or something at this point. There's going to be a lot of technical debt. I think moving forward, especially as we enter a new technological frontier, hopefully they commit to it, but secure by design is going to be really important.
Harry Coker Jr. mentioned that as well during the White House session, the secure by design, and he's really calling on more responsibility for the vendors as opposed to the users when it comes to that, so I agree.
Well, thanks for sharing your project with us. Appreciate hearing about it, and I look forward to reading it.
Thanks.
Excuse me. So how about main takeaways from the show?
Oh yeah. One thing I did notice this year that was kind of different from last year, there seemed to be more talk about protecting space systems. I don't remember that coming up last year or the year before, but during a couple of conferences, or during a couple sessions, I noticed that was kind of something. The NSA addressed it, so maybe that's a growing area.
Space systems,
like
satellite?
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Okay, all right.
Just that the term space.
It's gonna be on our radar then.
I haven't really heard the term space come up a lot in that area of cybersecurity, so kind of interested to see what maybe that will be coming up.
Awesome.
On my front, it is related to AI. I think a lot about how over the last 10, 15 years, when cloud became a big deal, folks rushed to implement that technology too, and then there were a lot of issues that cloud vendors are still dealing with today that draw parallels to a lot of the worries I just mentioned with generative AI. So as I go on the show floor and I see that 1 in 2, 1 in 3 companies mentions AI, intelligence, or something in the marketing in their booth, regardless of whether the technology is there or not, my hope, not being pessimistic, not being optimistic, but my hope is that people realize that if they don't secure now, even if it doesn't immediately mean shareholder returns, it could result in headlines on TechTarget.com/search security tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Like I said before, this is the last we're having Arielle and Alex on our live stream, but we will be back at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time tomorrow to talk to some more cyber experts on the last day of RSA Conference 2024. Remember to head to techtarget.com/search security for all of Alex and Arielle's coverage, and Ion Tech on YouTube for all of our previous live streams. Thank you for tuning in.